Agit Vach, a Mazel de Gevach, Avach, Femit Yeshia. Wow, 7 weeks in. What does that mean? We're 1 week away from Mitzvah Shem, two raffles. Not just one, two. One is sponsored by Heshi for $500 to the loft, and Mitzvah Shem, the other one, is sponsored by Anonymous for $500 for the Chazorah raffle. Okay, so we're going to start. We actually are starting. We were in the middle of a sugya that we left off, and so we're just going to finish that off and then do this week's. Again, last week we stopped in the middle of a sugya, and here we go. Daf Chav Daled Amud Aleph. We're approximately 10 lines down by V'loi Chayesh Rabbi Yehuda L'Bekiyas Hanoid. It sort of is a question. That whole sugya was discussing if Rav Meir, who says he is Chayesh from Misa by our case, and therefore you cannot use an animal for the wall. Rabbi Yehuda is not chayesh. Then we brought a bunch of different examples, and we went to the case of B'kiyas Hanoid, which was the case of Truma before Shabbos. He had the barrel that he designated Truma for beforehand, and we sort of end off. Rabbi Yehuda says you can't do that. Our mayor says you can, and why does Rabbi Yehuda say you cannot do that? It won't work. It's not. You can't separate Truma. He says because he doesn't hold of Brera. So now the Gemara, in Gemara fashion, is asking, really? Is that what Rabbi Yehuda holds? We have a question, we have a case where perhaps he would be concerned or not. So we want to understand. Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned that the barrel is going to break. Is he really saying that the whole reason is Breira, not the barrel breaks? If you continue the brisa over there, would you not agree with us to be concerned if the jug will break? And what happens? If the jug breaks, then it's Tevel Mafreya. And by the fact that Reed is asking the question, it shows that perhaps he's concerned about it. And how does Reb Meir end off? Call me when it breaks. So what did we learn? It learns out, like we just said, it sounds like, based on the fact that he's asking the question, that he's concerned that it may break. Otherwise, why is he asking, like, okay, very good, but what happens if it breaks? So how do we clarify? We say, Hashem Yehudahu, the Ka'amar Meir, the Leslie Breyer. So over there, how do we say it? We say, we just have to just like fill in the lines a little bit and say, what's Rabbi Yehuda saying? Rabbi Yehuda is saying, not I'm concerned. According to you, that says Breyer works, would you not be concerned that, okay, what happens if it does break? So he says, I don't have this brera. But according to you, the yesh brera, wouldn't you at least be somewhat concerned that it will break? And what happens if it breaks and the person drank? He's potentially chayiv misa. Again, Rameir says it's such a far-fetched thing. I'm not so concerned. Now we're going to continue, and again, one more time. Again, Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned for Misha. So the first time was Shiva Kanoid. Now we're moving on to the Misa part. He's not really concerned. We have a case where it seems like he is concerned. V'hotnan, we have a Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Af Isha Cheres, Mitakninin, Maskinin Loi, Shematamas Ishtoi. That what? That they prepare for the Kohen Gadol another wife. Whether it's standby or she's actually his wife. There's a bunch of different explanations if it needs to be a standby or not. But we see that they prepare a wife for her, which is what? That we're concerned that his first wife may die. And what happens if his first wife dies? He's not able to do the avodah. A Kohen Gadol has to be married in order to do the avodah because it says v'chiper ba'adu ba'ad beisai, and it says beisai means his wife. Ha'it marla. Amar, it's stated over there. Amar of Huna Beri Rav Yeshua Mala Asu Bekapara. So over there, the explanation is that Rav Huna says, Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yeshua, says, we made an extra. We're covering our bases extra because of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is different than anything else. So Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned for Misa, but in that case, we're dealing with Yom Kippur. We want to make sure all our bases are covered. Now we're going to say like this: Bein Lamanda Amar Shema Tamos, Bein Lamanda Amar Shema Tivrach. Whether the Manda Amar, which was Abaya that says Shema Tamos, or Abzira that says Shema Tivrach, that's why Reb Meir, they were explaining Reb Meir, that's why Reb Meir does not allow you to use an animal. They would all agree that this Midah Raisa is a good Mechitza. Meaning, Min HaTorah, you're allowed to use an animal for a wall. They said that Remeir, who said you're not allowed to, the reason why he said you're not allowed to, either it's because we're going to run away or because it's going to die. V'Rabbanan hu de geyser ba, and the Rabbanan were the ones that were geyser that you cannot have this animal for a wall. Ela me'ata Remeir to Tama Mishum Goylo. So now we're going to go and explain. According to this, Reb Meir should not allow, who says that you cannot use the animal for a wall, for what's it called by a mavoi, for a lechi, lechi for a mavoi, and for a goyel lekever. One of the things he says, you cannot use it for a goyel lekever, which means that it would be tahar and not tummy, meaning it does not transmit. Let's say you have an animal and you use it for the cover of the casket. According to Remeir, it would not transmit tumah when it moved later on, but it should. Mishum Goyel alamatanan. Therefore, why does it say Rabbi Yehuda metama Mishum Goyel Remeir metar? So we have a Mishnah elsewhere that explains, and it says clearly that Remeir says it's metar. Now, why wouldn't he be able to? Because we just said it's midar raisa, it would be a good mechitza. Midar raisa would be a good lechi. Midar raisa, it would be good for the girl lekever. So if midar raisa is good for a girl lekever, which means it transmits tumah, how could the mayor say that it's no good? Because it's sort of the reverse. All those things, the lechi and the wall for the sukkah, it's an extra stringency. He's adding a chumrah. But when it comes to the girl lekever, it's actually a kula. By Rameir is saying that you cannot use it, he's being makel and sort of saying that there's no tumah on the animal to transmit, which is a kula, and he's not allowed to do that. Why? Because midai rice, it would be a good usage. You would be allowed to use the animal. It would be a good usage. You could use the animal for a girl lekever. So how could he come and give a kula? So that's the question. It says over there, Rameir mitar. Ela Amar Avacha Bar Yaakov. So now comes, it's a great question. So now we have to really, I don't want to say forget, but forget about those two, Abai and Reb Zera, and how they explained Reb Meir. Comes another Amira, Avacha Bar Yaakov, and he's going to explain Reb Meir in a different way. Because this question is a really powerful question. Ela Amar Avacha Bar Yaakov, Kasav Reb Meir, Kol Mechitza Shaber Medis Baruach in a Mechitza. So he comes with a different way. He says Reb Meir's reasoning why you can't use it is because any mechitza that is shemed beruach, that has ear that's holding it up, in a mechitza. And Yikadami, there's another way to explain it, not that it's the ear. Amar Avacha Bar Yaakov, Kasav Meir, Kol Mechitza Sheina Asui B'dei Adam in mechitza. So basically, it's like a 3 steps. There's Remeir, Avacha Bar Yaakov is explaining Remeir, and then there's 2 ways, 2 shittas on how to explain Avacha Bar Yaakov in Remeir. So one way is any mechitza that stands with ear, that requires ear to stand, is not a mechitza. And the other one is, if it's not made by man, it's not a mechitza. So, just to understand, what does it mean by ear? And we explain this in the shir, that basically, if you were to, this ear is a non-tangible thing. So the animal has something spiritual. There's ear in it, and somehow it can now stand. If you pull the ear out of it, it would be dead and it will just collapse. So it's sort of it's made by Hashem, and that's why he says it would not be, or the other shita is it has to be man-made. Okay, now we're going to ask, my benayu, what's the difference between these two? Ika benayu, the oikma benay tapuach. Basically, what's the difference between these two? If, let's say, you were to use a blown-up balloon that was, let's say, the shape of a wall, or would hold up the wall, according to Rashi, it says that you would lean the wall on this and would hold it up. According to Manda Amar, that a mechitza that stands by wind, this one has wind to stand it, so it should be no good, right? Ear, so it should be no good. You blew ear into it, it has ear. Now this thing, according to the Manda Amar, should be no good. The Manda Amar ain't asur b'dei adam, but according to Manda Amar, that says that it's no good only if it's not made by man. Harei asur b'dei adam. So this scenario is sort of the in between those two, and that's the difference between those two shittas. But that's the explainer, and that's how it ends off. That really Remeir's reason why you do not use. We went through a whole daf explaining this. The real reason why you do not use an animal for a sukkah, according to Remeir, is because either it's not man-made, or it's something that is Amedes Baruch. Now, following up on that brayso by us, what else did we say over there? Rabbi Yosef Glili said, Af Amar Rabbi Yosef Glili, another thing. So, Amar Mar, this is a whole new sugya, but it's just a continuation of that brayso. Amar Mar Mishum Rabbi Yosef Glili. Mar said in the name of Rabbi Yosef Glili. Amru, af en kaisvin alav gitinashim. We also do not write gitinashim on an animal. My time to Rabbi Siglili, so now we understand what's the reasoning of Rabbi Siglili. The Tanya, because we learned in a brayso. Sefer, the word sefer, and there's a pasuk sefer creases. Einila sefer. So what do we learn now from the word sefer? And then we broke it down and share with a paper. We broke down each of the steps. Sefer tells you it has to be in klaf. So now minan l'rab is called davar. So where do we know that you could write a get on anything, on any type of paper or anything you could write on? Minan l'rab is called davar. Talmud loymar v'kosavla. That in the pasuk there's another two words there v'kosavla, which tells you mikol makom on anything. Imkein ma talmud loymar sefer. So one second, what's included in anything? Klaf. So once you have that, so now we're going back. What do you do with the word sefer? So what is it coming to tell you? That just like a sefer is something that doesn't have life in it and is not food. So too, anything that doesn't have ear or life, ruach hayim in it, and is not food, would be no good. So it has to specifically be on something that does not have it. V'rabbanan. Now what did the Rabbanan do with this entire pasuk? So they come and say they were against. Remember, there's a Rabbanan don't hold like Rabbi Siglili to begin with. They would say that you could write it on an animal. They don't have a problem with it. So iksir b'sefer. So what they say is if it would say b'sefer with the bays keda amit, they would agree to Rabbi Siglili. But because it doesn't have a bays, hashad iksiv sefer without the bays, l'sfiras dvarim ba'al mahudasa. It came to tell you that it has to be some sort of content in it, written content. It has to say who, what, sort of a breakdown in writing. For Rabbanan Havik Kosav, so now that's great. They use Sefer to tell you it has to be Sfiras Dvarim. But what do they do with Vikosav? My Darshibe, what do they learn from that? They use it to tell you that you get divorced through Ksiva, but not with writing, but not with money. You can't buy yourself freedom. Money doesn't buy everything. Why would you think yes? I may have thought that since we're makish, if you look on the Torah Rashon, like we said, it says there's a pasuk that says Tvarim Chavdal pasuk pays. She left this man, or this house, and she goes to another man. How do you get married? With Kesef Sharambia. One of the ways is Kesef. So since we put in the same pasuk, we make a hekesh, and we say, perhaps just like she could get married with money, perhaps she could get divorced with money. So we're telling you, no, that's what the Rabbanan do. So I may have thought, that since you were makish yitzilevaya, mahavai b'kesef alf yitzir b'kesef. Just like Havai is b'kesef, so do yitzir b'kesef. Kamash malah, no. That's why the Rabbanan use v'kosef law, specifically writing and not with money. Rabbi Yosef Glili, so we're going to switch it back to Rabbi Yosef Glili. Have you learned? Hi, Svira Menale. Where does he learn that it has to be money and it has to be shtar and not money? Sefer krisis nafkale. So he says there's two words right next to each other. Sefer krisis. So because they're bundled together, sefer karsa ve'en davar karsa. So the only thing that gets them divorced is a sefer and nothing else. V'idach. Now again we're going back to the Rabbanan. What do they do? Should they use this two words together, sefer krisis, to tell you that it has to be something that separates them fully? Now it's going to explain what does it mean separates them fully. Tanya, like we learned in the Brayso. Let's say a person gives his wife a get and says, "This is your get on condition you don't drink wine, and on condition you don't go to your father's house all your life or forever." Inzek krisis. This is not a good get. It's not a good cutoff. Why? Because you're connected. What happens if in 50 years from now she goes to her father? It's a problem. Then, if, let's say she got married, had children, everything. Short of she reverses back to the first husband, and everybody after it's it's a big problem. So, what do we say? Inzek krisis. Call shloshim, but if he says all 30 days, hareze krisis, that would work. So what do we see? It has to be, so the Rabbanim used the sefer krisis to tell you, it has to be a finalized cutoff. There has to be an end date. There can't be something open-ended. V'idach mikaras krisis nafka. And Rabbi Yossi Glili, where did he learn that it has to be a final cutoff? He learned it not from Sefer Creases, from Kares Creases. What does it mean? It could have just said, and Rashi explains that it could have just said, Demotzin Lemechtav Sefer Kares. It should have just said Sefer Kares. The fact that it added another stuff, Sefer Creases, Rabbi Yossi Glili learns from that extra stuff that it has to be Davar Kares Bin Levena. So now we're going to go back to the Rabbanan. What do they do with that extra stuff? Vidach, Kares Krisis, Laidarshi, the Rabbanan did not learn out Kares Krisis. So that's how they end off. We had the full breakdown, we put on the chat as well. Rabbi Sai, Agutavach, keep on rocking. Everybody, it's been a great journey. Another week till the raffles and the Mitzvah Shem. I believe the week after, we're going to talk to the Olam. Hopefully we're going to do maybe a Chazar from the beginning, the following week to be in, Monday to Thursday, each and everything till from where we started, till we're up to. And by the way, we're halfway through the end of the parak. Hagitavach.